Welcome to Energy 101, where we ask the dumb questions so you don't have to. Today, we are with Shad Frazier, and we are going to be talking all about Permian Basin. What is it? Why does everyone always talk about it? All about Midland, and yeah.
Yep. The Permian Basin is, I believe, the most, what's the word? Like the highest producing basin in the country, right?
Most prolific basin in the United States.
Okay. And on a world scale, is it close to?
For many points in time inside of all of history, the Permian Basin has been the most prolific basin in the world for production. And it's been that way since about the mid 60s.
Right. So the GOAT of basins. And
we love it.
It's right down the road from us. Kind of.
Hey, it's an easy southwest flight of an hour and a half, and you're right in the middle of it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I love taking some people out recently that had never been out to the basin before, and that they fly in for the first time and you've never seen it, and it's nothing but wells for miles and miles and miles of pads everywhere, and then you get them out of the plane and they see their first pump check. They're like, "It's real. This is real."
It is so cool. So I grew up in Midland, so seeing all the infrastructure is normal to me. That's like my mountains, my scenery is counting pump jacks. So I never really knew how cool it was because I was just desensitized. But now when I drive out there with my kids and seeing them get excited, especially with the wind turbines next to a drilling rig, next to a pump jack, in a beautiful sunset in the background. Oh, it's just my favorite. So it is really cool to see if you've never been out there.
Yeah, I've joked about it with a lot of people, the fact that, the people that live in Midland are living in the middle of the biggest industrial complex that's ever been built. And, millions and billions of dollars have been spent on making it what it is today. And the people there are the hardest working people in the world and love what they do and would not go anywhere else if asked, because that is the heart of the action.
Yep, it's true.
So the Permian Basin is the name of kind of like the greater basin. And inside are sub-basins, maybe is the right word.
Correct. Yeah. So the Permian Basin is basically the description of the age of the rock that we produce from. So the Paleozoic Permian timeframe. But when we deal with the Permian, we're dealing with the Midland Basin, which is kind of on your far east side, the Central Basin Platform, which is in the center, which is kind of this rock structure that uplifts and gets you out of the current plays that are going on and gets you onto different rock, and then it drops back down into the Delaware Basin. So you end up having three different types of basins with very different types of rock that produce inside of the one Permian Basin. And then you get way south of there and you get into actually the changes in the North American and South American plate. So you get into whole new basins with whole new reservoirs as you get further south.
That's so cool. I had no idea that there were multiple basins. So this is as you go underground.
Yeah.
The rocks?
Yeah. So, and they're big bowls. So you've got Midland Basin, Delaware Basin, and then you've got this big plateau in the middle. And the big plateau, if you actually wanted to understand it, is on the surface is basically when you get to the side of Odessa as you get to Andrews.
Okay.
Is where the Central Basin Platform, and as you drop off the Central Basin Platform, you're getting kind of west of Andrews and dropping off as you get into Mentone and everything else going out further west. So, a lot of great rock as you go out there, and it goes for hundreds of miles as you get closer and going out to El Paso.
That's awesome. I never knew that. That's really cool.
And you knew all those little towns he talked about because you grew up there?
Yeah, my mom went to high school in Andrews.
I'm like, I know an Andrew. I don't know where that is. Yeah, I mean, it's so prolific. And you said it goes back to the 60s. I mean, technically it goes back to the 20s.
Goes back to the 30s, and the 20s are kind of the expiration where people were starting, but really in the 30s is when you get to Santa Rita and you get the very first well that was drilled. And we joke about it today because you think about the Santa Rita was a well that took 60 days to get to 3,000 feet, and cable tool drilled, which means somebody was dropping a chisel into the rock over and
ding,
over
ding,
and over,
ding,
ding, ding, and just hitting little bits of rock out every day for 60 days. And the guy drilling it is going out and trying to raise funds and keeps having to go out for more money because they're like, we're going to hit oil, we're going to hit oil, we're going to hit oil. And it takes them 60 days. And then they finally hit oil and the whole world changes, because all of a sudden they start finding oil at 3,000 feet and it becomes prolific enough that the whole world actually starts moving out towards the Permian Basin to make it happen. And then you get into the 40s, your 30s to moving into 40s is World War II. And by the time we get to World War II, 25% of the world's production is coming from West Texas.
Wow.
Of the world, you said?
25% of the world's production was coming out of West Texas.
That is so crazy.
Yeah, we joke about it and think about it in terms of in 1942, the United States had to get oil from West Texas to Boston because that oil was going to feed the war effort in England and everywhere else. Well, you can't get oil from West Texas to Boston. You can't do it by train. You can't do it by truck in the amount of volumes because we're talking, at that point, it's almost millions of barrels that are moving. And the United States government put together the legislation and put together the funding for $50 million to lay a pipeline from Houston to Boston and did it in 1 year.
That sounds...
To think about trying to lay a pipeline today that would go from Houston to Boston and try to do it for under 50, you couldn't get out of Houston for under $50 million today. And they were able to get from Houston to Boston. And then, the reason why they do that is you couldn't put ships into the Gulf of Mexico because they were afraid of German subs sinking all the oil tankers. And that additional trip of time around, we couldn't defend all those ships. So we had to get it all to the Boston area and to those ports and then carry the oil from there.
So crazy.
That's like our pyramids of Giza in the U.S. I mean, that
so cool.
infrastructure, that project, I'm sure there's got to be like books and stories about that. That's
so
insane.
Many, yeah, there's so many great stories. But it's, the same time frame when you think about people that when we're talking about the Panama Canal and things that, great projects, huge undertakings that people would take on. Now, was it as safe as it is today? Was it as efficient? No. But when things had to happen, people found a way.
Were they surprised at how much oil they were able to produce at first?
It's always been a surprise.
Yeah.
Even when you talk about it in Midland, it's always like, we'll always find more. Even the people today, the Permian Basin will never drop. We'll always find another reservoir. We'll always find another play and we'll keep going. And that's always been the mindset. And it's been great. My family has been out in the basin since the turn of the century. And my grandfather was a geologist by hobby, not by training. And he was, our family land is now underneath horizontal development. And he always said, one day there's going to be oil found underneath our property. And he never saw it in his lifetime. But 20 years later,
so cool.
That property is paying for all of his kids to retire and not have to worry about things because of the royalty checks that have come in.
That's amazing.
Oh, yeah. I know, there's got to be stats on the amount of people who make bank off of mineral rights in Midland alone, or just any basin in our country. And, specifically our country, because supposedly the U.S. is the only country where we
own the mineral
private
rights.
mineral rights,
Yeah.
not government. What's your thoughts or maybe educate just in general how that works?
Yeah. So, as a family member who's had mineral rights, you have the opportunity to lease those rights out to an oil company. And then the oil company basically comes and says, we'll pay you for the rights to go drill on your property. And if we drill, we're going to give you X percentage of the production as it's yours to begin with. So we're going to take a portion of it and we'll give you a smaller portion of it back. And then from that, you'll get royalty checks for the rest of your life as long as those wells produce. So sounds really good. Sounds great. And in today's society, when we look at it, the typical royalty check is about 25% of the production that most people produce. But in the day when my family originally did it, it was actually an eighth. So, our royalty checks are not as big as they could be. But an eighth, and people would sign leases. My grandfather's original lease was signing it for $50 an acre, and he did it on just drill to earn. All you have to do is drill to earn those rights. And the first company that drilled to earn those rights did it in the 80s, drilled a dry hole, but earned the rights to drill and produce on our property forever because of that one well. So, so many stories are about people just taking a risk and going out to the Permian Basin to do it. Now, when you talk about wealth, and the difference of wealth between Midland and anywhere else. Midland is the highest GDP per capita of anywhere in the United States. And you wouldn't think it because, people are landlocked in housing. So there's not a big suburbs there's big homes and there's nice homes, but it's not like you come to Bel Air or something like that in Houston where these $10, $20 million homes, because it's so landlocked. People haven't ever built those type of homes out there. And the deal flow is different. I joked with my people that you join the petroleum club, You join the country club not because you want to be a socialite. It's because the deal flow that goes through the people that you interact with changes on what happens. Just because of us living there for the last 10 years, I've had deals come to me from outside the oil and gas space. People, when they need to raise capital for things, come to West Texas looking for money because people in West Texas are looking to put money somewhere other than the oil patch.
Yep.
And it's a give and take that really helps the rest of the United States.
It's
Yeah.
all business.
It is. It is all, I mean, every day, millions of deals are being done in this old petroleum club in downtown Midland. People sit across the table and billion-dollar deals have been signed inside of that building over, Krispies of bread with, fried cheese on top of it, French onion soup, and the staples of the petroleum club that everyone's seen.
It is. It's so crazy to think about how much money flows through there. But that's why I'm thankful I was raised there. I'm thankful for oil and gas in general because it's provided my entire life. But
Let's keep going with the minerals right stuff. I mean, when you describe it, you're like, of course, that's how it works. Like if a layman would be like, oh yeah, you're on the land, they want to borrow your land, you get a cut. Like no shit. So how come no one else does this outside of the U.S.?
So every country outside of the United States basically keeps everything under the ground as ownership of the state. And that was the one thing that really separated the United States from everywhere else, is that we said that if you own the surface, you owned everything underneath the surface. And that was a huge, huge difference. That, when you go deal with Saudi Arabia, it doesn't matter who owns it. The Saudi Arabian national government owns all the minerals underneath it. They owned everything underneath the surface. So it really changes how people were able to use that. That the base numbers are, there's been in Texas, there's been multiple trillions. It's actually somewhere around $4 trillion in royalties paid out to people. And not just people, because you look at the Santa Rita, the minerals for the Santa Rita, number one, were actually in the Texas land estate. So the money that the royalties that well generated actually went into funding Texas, University of Texas A&M, went to the school fund that then generated these great colleges and institutions with some of the biggest endowments there are based upon minerals. And so the mineral estate that's been out there has made a huge impact for people for generations.
Wow.
that reminds me of my question. I was going to say and this just goes to Midland in general. Although there's so much money that flows through there, there's not a lot being spent on schools and all of the things to do there. Like I grew up in Midland, so I understand there's nothing for kids except trouble.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on that?
I had an interesting conversation with someone the other day about that, and the fact that, you look at Texas and Houston. I'm getting ready to make the transition possibly to moving into Houston and dealing with what a home in Houston costs. And the taxes in Houston on a house are 3 times what the taxes in Midland is for a house. The people in Midland have fought for years to not raise their property taxes and not raise the taxes using the infrastructure of the oil and gas space to try to pay for the taxes, to pay for the schools. And, my wife went to school there in the 90s, went to Midland Legacy / Midland Lee, and that school looked almost the same when we moved back into town. It hadn't changed in 20 years and is still in use today. So you have a school that's been in use for 40 years plus, and just this last year, we finally got a bond passed. That bond's going to allow us to build 2 new high schools, repair, redo things, $1 billion fund, based upon a property tax increase, because the state was able to reduce the overall property taxes. The city increased the property taxes to match what was being reduced. And so all that difference, no one saw any reduction in their property taxes in the county. And all that money is going to go now towards building new schools. So it's still one of the cheapest places to live in the state, but it's now going to use some of those resources to make for a much better place for kids. The recent developments of the fact that some of the families inside of Midland are now going to put a zoo in and give something back to the community for allowing the people that are out there something. I mean, it's 5 hours to anywhere from Midland.
Seriously.
Oh,
My
yeah.
road trip was Lubbock.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And, my daughter was up there. My son was up in Lubbock, and, it's an hour and 45 minutes door to door to get up to Lubbock. And we do it all the time just because it would be different restaurants, different things,
mall.
the mall, or just different things to go do and see. And, but that's the way it is. Midland is an industrial complex. It is not a pleasure spot. The running joke was at one time Disney was supposed to theoretically build a amusement park somewhere outside of Dallas Fort Worth and try to think about coming out to West Texas, and they're like, no, we're not
doing that.
Not doing that. It's too far remote from anyone to draw anyone here.
Yeah.
And that's really the case. Is we joke about it as the family because our mineral estate's on the interstate, and we can't even get Buc-ee's to come out to West Texas because it's too far away. They won't come all the way. It's just on that
They would
edge.
kill it out there.
Oh yeah, Buc-ee's out in West Texas it would rake in the money.
Oh my
There's
gosh,
nice
they're making a
HEBs.
mistake.
There's nice HEBs.
Great HEBs. Great HEBs.
They just opened
They-
Costco.
They
got
put in the
Costco.
effort.
Yeah, I mean,
The
Sam's,
thing that I think about though are the teachers, and I don't know, I haven't looked at how much they're getting paid, but will new facilities help the teachers manage the kids? Because all my friends are still back there, all my family, so I have friends that have kids in junior high at public schools, and they just said it's like chaos. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping there's a change in that, just because people out there like deserve good education, and I think more exposure to the oil field. Like growing up there, I didn't really, I guess it's kind of on your parents to teach you, but school programs would be great.
Well, and one of the things when we talk about this mineral estate, most of the people that own the mineral estate don't live there now. Their grandparents were there.
Right.
Their great-grandparents were there. They were the ones that built the ranches that are now being drilled and developed. They've now all left. And so only thing is left is their name. It's great that their families have left foundations that are doing things for the community, but they're not there.
Right.
They don't live there. This education system in the Permian Basin is not really good. It's pretty poor. And a big part of that is the fact that, greater than 70, it's right around 60 to 70% of the student population in the public schools is of minority descent, or is first, English is not the first language in those homes. That's a huge amount for those schools. And every one of those kids, when they start talking about it, is, I think the number they were showing us the other day was around 55, 60% of those kids is on some type of food program because they don't have food when they go home, because they may have a parent who's in the oil field, but they're working hard to make the money that they make. They're not making mineral money. They're not engineer money. There are the pumpers. They are the roustabouts. They are the pipeline crews that are out there, and they're busting their ass every day to make them every dollar they can. And it's not enough, especially with the cost of living and everything that goes along with living in that area.
In a boom town.
In a boom town.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually wanted to take a lot of time to talk about kind of Midland in general, the infrastructure, the culture. There's a couple things that come up, including something you said, like, the infrastructure, the schools, it's systemic, it's a boom town kind of habit where one thing is that a lot of people don't live there. In fact, people live very far away. Some people even fly in just to work and then fly back to the city. And other scenarios, like you mentioned, like the minerals and stuff, this contributes to people not being aware, not caring, being apathetic. They're not voting. They're not paying taxes. They're literally taking advantage of Midland. They go there to get what they want, and then they leave, and they don't contribute to their community. And how accurate is that?
Well, and we were talking about the mineral estate, and a lot of that goes into your ad valorem taxes, your city taxes, and so on, that go into public schools. But then the Robin Hood laws come into play, and so you have a school district that gets a lot of money, but then that money is taken back by the state and then redistributed to school districts elsewhere in the state that don't get as much. So all of a sudden you have the school district that's getting some money, but then it's getting ripped right back out of their hands where they can't use it. So the state almost pushes you to pass your own bonds, because then you can control your money. And it's not so much that people are coming and going and leaving. It's really about having people that have a vested interest in making the difference. When you have a mayor who has her kids in the public schools, who are in the school districts that are there and dealing with it, and having families that are vested. The one of the things we found really interesting being in Midland was the fact that in my age group, so I'm in the 50s, and inside of Midland, the 45 to 60 age group is dead. There is less than 10% of the population is not in Midland in that age group, because everyone that was in that age group is when oil was $10 to $12 a barrel. So no one went to school to be oil and gas during that time frame, or got laid off early and didn't make it, so they didn't stay in it. So they're not in Midland. So when you deal with things in Midland, you deal with a crowd that's over 60 and retired and done, or you deal with a crowd that's under 45. Typically, the average age in Midland now is 35. So that means a majority of the population is super young, and they want things for their kids. They want better schools. They want these great things to come. And it's going to change. It's going to change because the demographics are going to change. That's going to put different elected officials in. The different elected officials will change the rules, change the laws, and bring some of this stuff in.
Yeah, I mean, transitioning back into the Permian, but kind of staying with this topic, I think another issue is that these are crazy good jobs where you don't need a college education to start making six figures. I actually just heard at a panel a couple weeks ago, this woman mentioned that 30% of high schoolers drop out in Midland, and it's because they could be
There's
17, 18 years
opportunities.
old and go drive a water truck for six figures.
You can get some of that. You have to get a CDL, and typically a CDL means you have to be over 18. You can't be under 16. But I had generations that were working for me in my past job, where grandfather, father, and son were all working on the same rig together. And, these are generational families that have worked through ups and downs all through the oil patch and made a huge difference to make it, inside of their families and change their families' total livelihood of what did they do, where did they come from, brought more of their family members to come be there, to come work, and it's changed the entire region, and it's changing it for the better. And it's, we all are having to adapt.
Well, isn't it to add on, Colin is one of those people who he went out into the oil field straight out of high school. He barely graduated, went out, and then look at him now. It changed the trajectory of our whole family. So it's cool to see. It's cool to see the opportunities. A lot of my friends were in the same boat where they were right out of high school. There's just opportunities there that aren't in other places.
Yeah. And there is nothing to say that you can't make six figures in time. The whole thing with the oil patch is there is opportunity abounds. It's all a matter of how much hard work you want to put in,
Exactly.
how much risk. That is really the testament to the oil patch, is those that take the risk greatly succeed, but they also take that risk on. And, 1 out of 9, 1 out of 10 oil companies fail, because everyone goes out there and tries to make it, and one bust happens and they don't have the cash reserves to go on, and their assets get bought up by Exxon. Their assets get bought up by a Chevron. Their assets get bought up by somebody else. And that's the story of the oil patch. It's a story of success, failure, breeding to more success, breeding to more failure, and then back and forth and back and forth. And the stories are in every family that's out there.
Let's get back into the nitty gritty, the Permian, stuff like that. You go to Midland, and you see pump jacks, you see drilling rigs, you see frac spreads. So you're saying, what I'm basically saying is that you see conventionals and unconventionals. Can you explain, the two broadly, and maybe why they're both going on at the same time? It isn't okay, conventionals are old school, let's move on. It's both, they're both happening.
Yep.
Why is that?
So if we think about where we were talking about before, where we had Midland Basin, Central Basin platform. Right now, the Central Basin platform is conventional. And when we mean conventional, it means that you can go drill a vertical well, go into the zone, still have to stimulate it, but you can stimulate it and produce. That well, maybe makes 25, 30,000 barrels, maybe 50,000 barrels of oil over the life of the well, and can make a lot of money for the people that are doing it if they know how to operate it effectively and efficiently. When we talk about unconventional, what we're dealing with is rock that you couldn't drill vertically and actually produce economically. So what we've then done is gone back into those same vertical wells, but then when we get into the pay zone, turn them from being a vertical well into a horizontal well in the unconventional rock. And now instead of having 20, 30 feet of pay, now we have 20, 30 feet of pay on its side, and we're going 10,000 feet of pay, and then stimulating that rock, and then being able to develop it and produce it. So now what you used to produce 50,000 barrels from a vertical well is now turned on its side, and now we're producing 50,000 over 50 times that, and now we're making 500,000, 300,000 barrels out of the same well. The economics are so much better than they ever were before. A good vertical well, I joke about it with people that come into the industry now, that when our first projects that we would approve, we were looking for 20% rate of return type projects. Maybe 25 was a really good well. And now when we drill horizontal wells, anything under 50% is deemed as a bad economic well. It's not worth it. There's too many other things that are worth above that we ought to be drilling. And so the economics of these horizontal wells is just so much more prolific, but only because of the advancements of technology, the advancements of understanding, have we been able to tap that and be able to bring that into what's produced today. So, you go back into not that long ago, George Bush is in office. So we're talking mid-90s. And in mid-90s, this is George Bush Jr. is talking about the fact that we're going to have to bring LNG into the United States because we're not going to have enough gas, and we're not going to have enough oil to be able to keep the country going. And goes forward, we start seeing horizontal development in natural gas wells, then turns into horizontal development in oil wells. And the Permian Basin goes from 4 million barrels a day back to almost 8 million plus barrels a day of production because of the unconventionals. And those unconventionals are now a biggest part of what is being produced in the United States. And we're actually able to export our oil all over the world.
Yep.
I have a question that might be dumb, but that's why we're here. Conventional just means it's vertical. Unconventional means horizontal. Or are you referring to the rocks?
The rock itself. Really what you're talking about, in my understanding of it, is that the unconventional is this rock that would not be able to economically be produced in the old way of doing things.
Okay.
We have to be able to touch it in a different way to be able to make it economic. So the old ways of a simple frac in a vertical well is conventional. Going horizontal is taking that same rock. The best way I heard it described one time, and this was way early in the gas unconventional time frame, was Rex Allman was with Anadarko, and he's getting in front of a group, and he's trying to explain to people that we are actually producing oil out of rock that looks like your driveway.
Okay.
And you can't see the oil in it. You couldn't even think about it, but we're stimulating it and breaking apart that rock and drawing the oil out of that driveway pavement and actually making it produce. And so the best way to describe oil out of an unconventional is you're drawing it out of rock that you couldn't see the oil in if you just looked at it.
Gotcha. And with a conventional, you basically can see it.
It's still not a big lake that you could get oil out of. It's still in the rock, but it flows. You could smell it. You could feel it. And unconventionals, you have to do something to help make that rock work.
Got it. Okay.
I also have a dumb question, which is, I have this understanding that people still kind of like take over old wells. I guess legacy well is one of the terms I hear. Pump jacks, like it's almost like an investment where it's like, instead of doing a whole big project, becoming an energy company. I mean, like you and a few guys can go get some pump jacks and just own it and run it, right? Is that a thing?
It's still a thing. It's just, it's not as easy as it was. We talk about a decline curve, and, wells start off horizontal. They make hundreds of barrels of oil a day, maybe 1,000 barrels of oil a day. But as those wells decline at year 10, at year 15, now you're talking about a well that's maybe doing 50 barrels a day, or maybe it's 10 barrels a day. Especially the old conventionals, the San Andres, the Central Basin platform wells, they're making 2 barrels a day. And you can go buy those assets from companies that no longer deem them as profitable. The lifting cost on those wells isn't, a horizontal new well lifting cost is under $10 a barrel for almost everyone. But a vertical well that's out there, or some of these older wells, it's $30 a barrel. So all these big companies don't want to own the vertical wells because they don't want to have high lifting cost production on their balance sheets. They just want the new good stuff that's in the sub 10. So people can go out and go buy those assets and try to operate them and try to go out and try to make a living. And you can make a pretty good living off of producing those wells. But the difference is the margin. If you're, oil $60 a barrel and costs you $30 to produce, it means you only make $30 a barrel, and it's not that much. But if you're doing a horizontal, that means it's 60 and 10. So there's $50 of margin. So how do you play those margins?
Yeah. Okay. Let's transition one more time. We have, let's talk more like tech future of that. But sticking with the pump jacks, because I was in Midland a couple of weeks ago filming some stuff with the students at TCU, and we were doing everything from conventional to unconventional. And something I thought was interesting is that we were kind of in a patch full of pump jacks, and the operators were talking about how he checks on them every day. Like he walks around, he drives truck like well to well, and he checks on them. And he says, these days people avoid that by, there's some kind of technology where you're able to just monitor it freely. And he kind of laughs at those people. He says, like, I don't know, like we're not there yet, or that's wishful thinking. I don't know. Like, what is your thoughts on that?
Oh, it's not wishful thinking. It's today. My last organization, we went through a complete digital revolution inside of an oil patch. And we took a whole bunch of old vertical wells that were being produced that way. We would go around and hit every well every day and see how much production was being made. Then we started figuring out, we could start collecting some of this data with SCADA, which is basically putting small devices on them, and those small devices relay information back. We built out a full infrastructure of microwave data transmission that ran across all of our assets all over the Midland Basin. And with that data, we could then manage by exception, which meant that we were able to use data to do what the pumper was doing, bring all that data in, and then analyze it and determine what wells did we actually need to go see to go improve the production from the day before. So managing by exception allowed us to then not have manpower go out to the field, but allowed us to use the data to bring the field to the man. And then our manpower was able to be then leveraged to go, where could they have the biggest impact that day? Now, you still have to go out and go put eyes on, in theory. We're testing technology in my current role where we're putting cameras with small detectors and small data collection systems in remote areas where we don't have to be on site to be able to collect. And it's been, good trial. We're in the middle of it. But in the trial, of course, we had a leak show up. And if we would have had a pumper going by every day, he wouldn't have caught that leak for maybe 12 hours, 20 hours. Yeah. It could have been a much bigger leak. Instead, our camera caught it. Our guys watching our camera said, hey, send somebody out there. We're out there in a couple hours fixing the leak instead of multiple hours and fixing a much bigger leak. So the whole idea behind, we have to be out there. The man has to be out there. We're replacing the man being out there to collect the data and turning that man or that person into a person that's managing the asset and improving the asset every day, not by writing data down, but by finding ways to get more out of the ground. We described it as we used to have pumpers, and we turned our pumpers into profit specialists, because the people in the field are your front line on how do you make the most profit off every barrel you produce.
You have the coolest job, I will say. It sounds just like
I love my job.
Yeah, it sounds like such a fun, like just to analyze a whole bunch of data and figuring out just how to get more coming from the ground.
Sounds organized, very OCD. I think I can hang.
It's organized chaos is the best way to describe it, because it's just how much data is coming in and how do you sift through the noise to find the impact that you can make inside of an organization. And I think that's the best part for everyone who works in these roles, is the fact that you can see your impact every day.
Yeah.
When we're trialing another piece of software, and that piece of software allowed us to visualize what we were doing. And we started at the beginning of this month at 51,000 barrels a day. And now this week we're at 55,000 barrels a day. We've gotten 4,000 barrels of production back because a new software allowed us to visualize something different.
Yep.
And to see it in a different way. And those are the type of things, when you can see wins like that, that's huge.
huge. You're like testing things and seeing it's a lot. I've never made this comparison before, but it's a lot like marketing, but just on a much larger, more fun scale where it's like infrastructure and get to try out new software and technology. And the technology in the field, I think, is some of the coolest technology out there.
They got drones.
We've got drones, we've got AI, we've got tools. One of the things that we're looking at and testing right now is the fact that, in the past, if you wanted to make an adjustment to one of your wells, you had to have somebody go out to that well and actually key in the adjustment that needed to be made. Now we're putting AI technology edge devices on these wells, and those edge devices are able to make those connections for you from somebody who's sitting behind a computer that can be here in the United States, that can be in Egypt, that could be in Indonesia. And 24 hours a day, someone's able to watch that well in the Permian and make sure it's maximizing its production every hour of every minute of every day.
So cool.
That's the future, baby.
Yeah.
And I mean, speaking of the future, just to kind of wrap up everything, like what do you see for the Permian in the future? It had its ups and downs. Is it trending up? Is it getting drained, dry? What is the future of the Permian?
I've described it as the fact that the Permian has been a merry-go-round that everyone has been wanting to get on for the last 10 to 15 years. Everyone wanted to buy a piece of the Permian, to get on the ride, to see what the ride was like. And we've been going up and down, producing every barrel of oil as fast as we could out of the merry-go-round. The easy stuff is going away. The question is what replaces it? What comes next? There's always been what comes next in the Permian. Is it the Barnett? Does the Barnett open up, become something different? Is it something deeper? Is there lithium that we need to be producing from the produced water that could allow us to do something different? It's how do the people out there are the smartest people in the world because they're figuring out how to make something out of nothing. And we'll figure out a way. Is it going to be different? Yes. Is it going to be hard? Yes. But they will figure out a way to make it work.
I'm pumped.
That
was like a coach speech.
I know. It's exciting. It's very exciting.
Cool. Let's wrap it up with our on-screen segment.
Wait, can I ask a question first? This is like a silly question.
Yeah, we get all the
What
dumb
are your
questions
thoughts on Landman? Since you're from the Permian. I know, right?
Yeah, I love Landman because I had to tell my family, outside of having the drug cartel involved, that was pretty much my job every day, was listening to the stories of this well's down, this landowner's mad, this is going on, we've got to renegotiate this contract, this person's coming in and out. And that was a large part of what I was doing every day, outside of dealing with drug cartels. And, we were having oil field theft, but not drug cartel stuff. But so what I really like about what Sheridan is doing with the storyline is he's teaching people about reality. The storylines where Tommy is getting out there and teaching the lawyer, she's like, hey, there's windmills. Why don't we live off the windmills? Let me tell you about why these windmills don't work. And he runs through the whole diatribe of how hard it is to get the story across that windmills work, but they don't work for everything. But he doesn't do it in a negative way. He's just, matter of fact, this is
reality.
This is reality. And let's talk about this and let's be real, because it's not as easy as everyone wants it to make it out to be. So I think Landman does a good job of dumbing down the oil field into helping everyone understand it and how it applies to them today.
Yep.
Well, you're going to love our segment.
Oh, did I steal it?
She queued it right up.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
So I
had no idea.
I got some screen grabs from Landman.
Yep.
And look at that. Our first scene. We got the main character is in some kind of sand silo with the cartel. So how many times have you encountered the cartel?
I have never encountered the cartel in my roles.
You've never been kidnapped?
I've never been kidnapped, had a bag over my head, and someone beat me with a hammer trying to get me to negotiate the deal. But at the same time, have I been in some negotiations that felt like that afterwards? Yes. But that's the joy of the deal, of trying to make something happen.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, I mean, basically just share your opinions. Yep. Let us know if it's a bullshit meter, what level it's at.
Yeah, pretty high on this one.
I always say Landman is like the Grey's Anatomy of the oil field.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, great. Okay. How many times have you seen a private jet parked in the middle of an interstate and then a truck runs into it and it explodes?
Yeah, no, that's pretty high on the BS meter on this one.
This is the first episode.
Yeah, it started off with a bang. I mean,
literally,
it really did. But, The bad news is that stuff like this happens, but not to this level, if that makes sense. People steal things, people do, that leads to issues. To this level, no. And, the fact that you're out in the middle of nowhere, the fact that the cartel could use a road that you built in the oil field, does that type of stuff could happen? Yes, it could happen. Does it happen everywhere? No.
Are
there stories of it happening? Yes. So always a little bit of truth in every one of these scenes.
All right. Next, we got booby coffee cafes.
This is real. My wife has been to it and seen it in action. She wanted to figure it out. It's out by Odessa, and you can actually go out and get coffee there.
It has to be in Ector County.
Yeah.
Not allowed in Midland County.
There's just one. It's in Ector County, and its oil field does go by it, so it's out there.
It gives me because like you see this a lot in Texas, like Houston, Austin, like San Antonio specifically loves like these little coffee shops that are like, the size of this room, and it's like a drive-through. And so when you see the exterior of this, it's that, but it's Hooters inside. And I'm like, oh my God, is this all over Midland? But I guess
it has a name. Actually, I came across the Instagram. I forgot the name of it though.
I can't remember it either. My wife would laugh at me because she was telling me about it. But it's a real place.
Boob Town or something.
But it's
oh yeah, Boob Town. That's a great name.
They serve a need. And that need is to be open at 6 a.m., getting coffee for all the crews that are going out. And like you said, a majority of these guys are guys that are out there living in a man camp, going out to do a job. And lo and behold, these girls take care of these guys in the best way possible, at least putting a smile on their face before they go out and go do a nasty job all day long.
All right.
They know their demographic.
I can see
it's a great marketing
right here. It says Babes Brew.
Brew.
I don't think they,
I don't think it's called that, but I know that I came across the Instagram after later.
Yeah, and they're proud of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing no different than going to Twin Peaks. I mean, that's what they're serving.
I mean, I'm just waiting for like in a few years when next time we visit and there's like 20 of them. Like that sounds inevitable.
Yeah.
Won't happen.
And not in Midland.
No?
Especially not in Midland County. Like Midland County will not allow anything like that.
Okay. Very traditional.
All of the things like that are going to be
Odessa. That we'll save that for another podcast. The Twin Cities.
A whole episode on Ector County.
Yeah. All right. We got weird friend eating beans and drinking beer in the middle of the day.
Yeah, this is your petroleum engineer that is the driller. And have I seen that guy? I haven't been that guy, but I have seen that guy and worked with that guy and stayed in his trailer for a period of time. And, there are guys who just love to be on the job site. And that's their happy place. And eating the can of ranch beans.
Yes.
The beer, no beer's allowed on oil field sites. But, that guy, been around him, know him well. And, the oil patch is full of them.
Ranch style beans sell out there.
Hell yeah. I think it's safe to say we know where he gets his coffee. All right. High school football, baby.
I've been to that stadium. I've been to that, best games in the world, Odessa versus Odessa High. And you will never understand high school football till you go out and you see a 500-member marching band. And no matter how bad Odessa High's football team was, 500 kids are in the marching band showing up and marching their hearts out. The girls on the dancing team are dancing all game long. For 3 hours, they're in the stands dancing to whatever's going on. I mean, it is the lifeblood of the community on Friday nights. It's a lot of fun. And, my kids went to a smaller school when they were there. And if you were not at the high school football games, people were asking, why weren't you there?
Yep.
It's just part of life. And I will say it was the hardest transition when I went from Colorado and where I grew up and started playing football at Tech, and all the guys I knew were playing football with were guys that had been in this world. And my world, we couldn't get 200 people to show up for a high school football game on a good day. Yeah. And it's just night and day difference.
It's so true. They're celebrities of the town. And actually that stadium is really cool. It's literally in the middle of nowhere. Like you're driving out. I don't know if that's Ratliff.
That's Ratliff.
It is. Yeah. You're driving out. It looks like the middle of nowhere. And then there's just this really nice stadium out there.
All the funding goes to the stadiums.
Yes.
The stadium was built in 1980. Okay. I mean, or even before. I mean, it's been there for years. And the funny part is there are stadiums like it all over West Texas. You go to Andrews. Andrews Stadium is exactly like this, seats 30,000 in a town that has 30,000 people.
Yeah.
And the stadium can fit everybody in town in it if they need to. But it's the lifeblood on Friday night. There's nothing else to do, so everyone shows up for the game and gets their hot Cheetos with chili in the bag and goes out to the game with cheese on top, and that's just life.
Yep.
All right. Up next, we got grilling and drinking on site. This is on the well pad.
No, it's not.
It's
this
a
is
man
in the
camp.
man camp. This is where it's allowed. So in the man
Oh.
camp, everyone comes together. And this is no different than having 4 guys that are in a trailer anywhere else in the world. They're going to have a bunch of beer. They're going to have a bunch of steaks. There's not going to be a single thing of green anywhere around this, and they're going to be happy. And that's what happens out here.
The man camp is like when you go like 12 days on, 12 days off.
Yeah, you're not on job site, so everyone comes back. Endeavor had a man camp, and the man camp, all you had was everyone had a room. In your room was a bed, a hot plate, a small fridge, and a bathroom. And then you had communal areas. In the communal areas, they had cookers and things like that for everyone to come in. But it allowed people to come in from elsewhere. All you need is a bed at night because you're going right back out as soon as it's daylight. So you're going to work 14-hour days. Your 8 hours that you can sleep, all you're doing is sleeping. So
How far are these camps usually from the site?
So most of these camps are in and around the outskirts of town, but most of the job, Endeavor was lucky in the fact that our wells were all within an hour to an hour and a half of our office.
Yeah, that's the thing about Midland is that everything is kind of right there. If you're like in Pittsburgh and you need to go out to like the Marcellus, you're driving hours. So
yeah, that's where the being able to do something like this where you can localize people is huge. And you do this because you can put all those people in, have the shared resource instead of having to build multiple of these all over the place because there's no water. You have to bring power out to it. And so having a man camp where you can put fresh water, put electricity out there and make life livable for these guys that are busting their ass all day long for you to be able to make the production, it's important. And make life as livable as possible inside of these facilities.
looks like a good time. Next,
So it gets speed up.
I love Modelo Negra. Okay, got a big scary explosion. What kind of blowout or what's the word for this?
Yeah, this is where we start hitting the BS meter on this because
The Grey's Anatomy part.
Yeah, everyone who's seen it knows that number one, they should have been using a brass hammer. Number two, we don't see explosions like this on most of these old wells because they don't typically have enough pressure. Now,
Right.
does not mean that this doesn't happen. It's accidents happen in the oil patch all the time, but that's why we have EH&S teams that are out there trying to do their best to make sure that everyone's being safe every day when they're doing their job so that stuff like this doesn't happen. Now, that's the one thing Landman just gets so wrong is everything they do is breaking the rules. And, there's a scene later where, he's saying, where the young man's talking to the lawyer and said, I haven't seen the Railroad Commission come out and do an inspection on any of your sites. You haven't done any inspections on any of your equipment. Do you want to start calling those people today? That's why you're here offering us money because they're doing it wrong. And all the oil companies that are out there today are doing it as right as they possibly can. So, because your people are your most valuable resource.
Yeah. And I think safety has come a long way in the past.
Huge way.
Yep.
Yeah. I hate to say it because I was one of those, I was an injury statistic as a worm when I went out my first year as an intern in the oil patch because we just weren't doing things safe. And, so I became a statistic and, you don't want to be the statistic. You want to be the 0-0 safety card. That is what everyone wants to shoot for.
Cool. Next, we got wind turbines. So we mentioned this, like they are all over Midland, kind of mixed with the oil and gas.
Yeah.
And there's like a famous line, how he kind of breaks it down, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
The
windmills are out there, and there was a huge deal. Pioneer was getting ready to do a windmill power plant install kind of southwest of Midland, and before the Exxon deal got done. And, we all need electricity. The Permian Basin is energy starved. So, when we left Endeavor to get a new power drop so that you could get power to an installation could take you up to 2 years of advanced permitting to try to get power. So everyone wants more windmills. Everyone wants more solar panels. Everyone wants more.
Direct
We
power,
just need
yeah.
more power. Endeavor spent millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to put power infrastructure into our oil field so that we could control our own timing on when we could turn on wells. A lot of other operators are out there having to put remote generators, diesel generators on site to generate the power they need to operate. So windmills, great. We'll take any bit of power we can get.
Is that what Endeavor did?
We did no windmills. We actually work really, really hard at bringing power into the Permian Basin so that we could take off the highline power and then distribute that power. But we were in negotiations at looking at putting in solar and putting in other things to be able to help offset.
Okay. I think wind turbines are perfect in West Texas because there's so much land and there is so much wind.
Yep. But it's all relative. They cost a lot. There's a lot of P&A, there's a lot of liability for removing it, putting it on in place, and a lot of operational that you have to deal with. Yeah, it's
costly.
It's no different than any other power generation. There is costs that go along with all of them. And at the end of the day, what it really requires is that society needs power to do everything it does every day. And the more we have, the better off we will be.
Yeah.
All right. Up next, Bentleys. How many fancy cars you see?
It's funny. You go around Midland on Friday. Monday through Thursday, everyone drives their white truck and to work and everything else. Friday afternoon, the fancy cars start showing up. And, someone had a Lambo that they had put a wrap on, in like a gold tint wrap on it. And, the guy bought a used Lambo, put a tint on it and made it look all brand new and everything, but it was used. I mean, everyone knew it in town. The issue goes back to the fact there's more money than smarts in some cases, and people will do this. But the whole scene where she goes to the rental car store and says, "I need a car." She's like, "Well, I've got a Mercedes." "Well, I don't want to look at a place." You won't look at a place in Midland.
Yeah.
All the wives are driving Mercedes, they're driving Land Rovers, and there's not a Land Rover dealership for 500 miles from Midland, because every one of those Land Rovers has to go to Austin, to Dallas, or Houston to get serviced. Yeah. It's just, that's the way it is out there.
Okay, now we got more cartel. You ever had a gun point at you?
I've had many of my people had guns pulled on them by landowners, but never cartel. And the even better scene is the one follows this, where all of his guys pull guns out to aim back at the cartel right after this scene. But, that is definitely a rule against most oilfield companies of having any weapons inside of a vehicle is definitely not on your safety radar.
Landowners can be scary.
Well, as a landowner out there, you want to defend your land.
Yeah.
The issue we all run into is that the oil company comes in, drills their wells, and then leaves their mess behind.
Yep.
I have 23 vertical wells that were drilled in the 60s on our property that no one wants to take care of.
On your
our property in Big Spring right now.
Okay.
And we're fighting tooth and nail with the Railroad Commission to figure out how are we going to get this cleaned up.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to deal with it.
Wow.
Jeez.
Okay, I think we got a few more here. Okay, how many times has the Army been deployed in your time in Midland?
Yeah, in Midland, not a whole lot. I will tell you that there was a lot of hard conversations during Uri. When the winter storm came through, and
I'm sure, yeah.
And after Uri, there was a lot of questions about how do we, do things better. But government, they like to get involved, but at the end of the day, they know they don't know how to get involved and make an impact.
Yep.
Okay. My favorite, swimming in the what is it called?
This is a frack pond.
The frack pond.
Yeah. This is a frack retention pond, and they're out there swimming in it. It's a big swimming pool. I know.
Romantic scene, by the way.
It's a really romantic scene in that, with the flare going off behind them, which doesn't happen. No. But, I
have never done that.
Yeah. And the funny part is I still remember, building my first one of these, and I built one way back in the 90s. It was in the Rockies, actually. It wasn't even out in the Permian. And we were having to build it because we had to have retention from moving from hill to hill, and you're putting water in it and getting water out of it. It looks pretty at the surface. You don't want to touch the bottom. The bottom of those things is covered in salt. It's covered in grime and everything else. But this is the biggest piece of change in the oil patch, and especially with the legislation that just got passed in this last year, the ability to now reuse produced water for irrigation.
Nice.
This could change the whole dynamic of the Permian on the fact that if we don't need the water in the frac pond, people can use it to farm. Now you're talking about dry cotton that can actually be watered with this stuff and actually make a good product. For years, my family lost money every year trying to dry farm cotton in Big Spring. If you're talking about the fact that we have water that we could use and irrigate, game changing on what you could possibly do.
Why don't they? So I know like produced water is like a huge deal that they don't like currently. There's so much of it that you're just injecting it back underground. Is there a reason for that?
Salt.
Okay.
Most of the water that we produce out of the oil patch is heavy laden in salt.
So you can't do anything with it.
So you can't do anything with it easy.
Okay.
Now we can recycle and clean a lot of that salt up and then generate it to a water. There's several consortiums that are being done right now at the universities on how do we get this water where maybe it's close to potable, where it's really good for irrigation. But now that the legislation is passed that it's available for that, and now that the universities are working on it, we are talking about now that there's an opportunity on how do we use this water, because at the end of the day, everyone who's using it right now uses it for frac. When the frac crews leave, we're still going to be producing this water. And how do we find a better use of that water to make West Texas something that is more usable than just by oil and gas?
Right.
Cool. Yeah, I think you need to connect us with someone who's like a water guy, because obviously that's kind of like involved in everything. And we went out to, when we're in Midland, we were on a water site and they wouldn't even let me film. So got to find someone who will share their secrets too, because for some reason they didn't want us filming anything.
It's always one of those things. Everyone's very touchy about the subject right now because of what is their proprietary, what is their cleaning process, how clean does it have to look, because they don't want to have you showing pictures of their water and showing the nasty grime that's all on the edge of the pit. That just doesn't look good for anybody. So it's really about controlling the narrative. We're doing our best. Sometimes our best isn't good enough, but every day we're getting a little bit better. And I think that's really going to be the testament for everyone out there, is that water is hugely valuable to everybody in Texas. San Antonio is running out of it as it keeps growing. Austin's running out of it for what they need, for all the population. And we have got to find a way to use this water in more efficiently than just putting it back in the ground.
Right.
Well, Shad, thank you for coming in, sharing us your Permian knowledge, your Midland knowledge, lots of Midland knowledge from our own Julie.
I think this is my favorite episode. I feel like it was like a history lesson.
That's what I was kind of going for. Yeah.
It was just fun to be able to sit around and talk about the oil patch. And so for all the things I said wrong today, for all those that are experts, I apologize. It was doing my best. So
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you.